Say It With Guitars. I'm your host, Pete Cornelius. Each episode, I'll be digging deep and getting to hang with some of Australia's finest guitar pickers, songwriters, producers, collectors, and makers. I look forward to bringing you these fun conversations and hope you enjoy Say It With Guitars. Yes, hello friends. Thanks again for joining us. This is going to be the last episode for Season 2. I've had me a great time chatting with some good people about guitar, learned a lot, and yeah, it's been fantastic to share these conversations with you guys. And a big thanks and shout out to you listeners and supporters of the show for tuning in and sharing it around and getting involved. It's great. Much appreciated. Hope you all have a great Christmas break, New Year, and enjoy the summer for you guys down here listening in Australia. And as per norm, you can check my website for gig guides and all things happening in my world. And until next time, folks, I will see you in Season 3. Before we crack into today's show, I'd like to shout out to our sponsor, Mr. Billy Tarrant from Tarrant Guitars. Billy's an amazing luthier and he makes some real sweet instruments. I'm lucky enough for him to have built me a 00 size acoustic guitar, which I've dragged all around the country and it's sounding better than ever. So check out tarrantguitars.net.au, Tassie's one-stop custom workshop for custom-made guitars, all guitar repairs and services. Let's get into the show. All right, I'd like to welcome to the Say It With Guitars podcast today, Mr. Josh Cunningham. Josh, how are you going?
Good, thanks, Pete. Nice to be chatting with you.
Nice to be chatting with you. Thank you for taking a bit of time out of your busy promo schedule. You guys have been on the pump. You've been getting on telly, on radio, new record.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, the new record's out. Not a lot of promo today. It's real packing for heading off tomorrow. We're heading to Queensland, so it's you know what it's like when you go on the road and you've got to make sure everything's there and everything's working. And
absolutely.
I don't know what happens with me, but somehow I always seem to need to reconfigure a pedal board every time before I go on the road. And it always turns into like a very time-consuming nightmare. But anyway, I'm getting through it. At least it's not midnight, which it ends up being.
Yeah, no, most of the time it is midnight and then you get no sleep and you're paranoid that you've got all the cables patched in the right way and you haven't got like an earth buzz or some sort of annoying thing that could have been regulated.
Yeah.
So maybe what's on your board? What are you up to in that regards? So you're playing in acoustic shows and you're sort of integrating effects or boosts or drives. What's happening in that regard?
Yeah, well, ironically, I spend all this time on pedal boards and I'm not a pedal board gear guy. What happened was playing with the Waifs, it was always just as simple as taking your acoustic guitar and using whatever DI they had at the venue, and it always sounded great. It was easy. I had one guitar case and that was it. Yep. But then along the line, started putting a bit of electric guitar on a few records and then, I need to bring that along live now. And it's kind of morphed into this situation where I still predominantly play acoustic guitar, but I've recently stuck a magnetic sound hole pickup in and I send that through an electric amp.
Yep.
So I've got a drive pedal and a boost pedal and tremolo and just a few basic things, a compressor.
Yep.
And and so that's basically it. But somehow fitting that onto the pedal board, and I've got one of those Felix, Grace Designs Felix DIs.
Oh, beauty. Yeah, cool.
So it's got two channels, so I can have the magnetic pickup going through one and the transducer going through the other. And it's all a very elaborate kind of chain of stereo cables and whatnot, and making sure that the signal goes to the right places. And I just want to be able to plug one lead in to my guitar, whatever guitar, be it electric or either the acoustics. I've just got one lead and I just switch between them on the board. But in order to achieve that, it's quite elaborate and it does my head in every time.
Yes, but the luxury of one cable would be such a pleasure on stage, because I've been trying to do the 2-cable thing for a while, and like 50% of the time it's in the wrong hole and it just sounds like crap. It's like, oh, idiot, switch, and then off you go. I should be just putting tape on there or some sort of like marker to help things, but maybe I should just be doing the Y cable, the TRS thing. Maybe that's the easiest thing.
Yeah. Well, thankfully with the Waifs, we've got a great sound engineer and a great guitar tech, and he's been able to kind of get me sorted out. But about to go on the road with Felicity tomorrow, and so we're just on our own. So I picked his brain, wrote down a few notes before the end of the last Waifs tour, and hopefully I'm good to go. So it all seems to be going okay.
Nice. Yeah, it was great to hear you guys in Hobart recently down at the beautiful Odeon Theatre. And I haven't heard you guys for a long time. It must have been up in Blues Fest I first heard you guys. Must have been mid-2000s. And I've always admired your acoustic tone, like, because plugged in acoustics can be a nightmare. They can be thin or boxy or woolly, and but obviously it comes down to the person in control of the instrument itself. But I've always admired the thickness and the girth of your tone. So have you always sort of dabbled in the magnetic system as well, or is that kind of like a recent thing?
It's very recent, actually, and the reason I went down that road was because the Waifs just did a 20-year anniversary tour of an album, Up All Night.
Mm-hmm.
And on that album, there was quite a bit of like acoustic going through the electric amp with a little bit of drive on it. And the problem is with the transducer pickup doing that, it tends to not sound that great.
Yeah.
And when I've got the same amp and the same chain going for my electric guitar, there's such a disparate thing going on between the electric and the acoustic.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if I stick a magnetic in the sound hole, it's going to sound more similar to my electric, and I'll be able to, deal with that issue a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
So the magnetic is actually really recent, and what I've always done is just used, I've got a K&K in my acoustic now. I've had that for quite a while. Mm-hmm. But initially, my very earliest guitar was just a Takamine, and it had the old, before they had the digital preamps and whatnot, it was just the old volume, middle bass, treble kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I always thought it sounded fantastic. Like I said, I'd plug it into whatever DI that was at the venue, and it always sounded great. Yeah. And then I'd just regulate. If I want a bit of boost, I'd just set the volume on the preamp at 3/4 and then just push it up full bore when I want it to be a bit louder.
Great.
And so that was always the way. But yeah, as I say, it doesn't sound that great going through an amp. So I got the magnetic recently, and I should give a little shout out to Fishman, actually, because they sent me a nice pickup called a Black Stack, which was I was put onto it by Jeff Lang, who I know you did your very first episode with Jeff.
Yep.
And because I got the whole idea of doing this from him, because he's got the volume pedal and he blends in that dirty sound. And I said, what are you using? Because I knew he used Sunrise pickups, but he said, get onto a Fishman Black Stack. They're easy to get, and it's basically the same as a Sunrise.
Yep.
And so I couldn't find one in Australia. I reached out to them and just asked, can I buy one direct from you and get it sent out to Australia? And 2 days later, someone from their artist relations department got back, and the guy had seen the Waifs playing in America 20 years ago and said, I'll send you one. So
fantastic.
It's proven to be a fantastic sound. I really, really love it.
Excellent. Yeah, it's definitely a thick, but you've also got there that nice sort of transducer sort of top end and sort of acoustic tone, but then the magnetic cuts through with a bit of mid range and sort of low end and your effects and things. So do you send just the effects to the magnetic? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. It's just a pretty simple chain. Like I said, there's a compressor, there's a clean boost and a drive, and then tremolo and awesome. A bit of reverb I just get off the amp itself.
Yep.
But it's the thing you mentioned about having a nice thick sound. I've always tried to achieve that, because to me that's what acoustic guitar sounds like. Too often you hear them very bright and spangly sounding.
Yeah.
When mixed through a PA, but I guess the challenge is when you have a rhythm section, and if there's a keyboard as well, it kind of swallows up a lot of the low frequencies of the acoustic guitar. So, if you actually, check your guitar and you get that sound, as soon as the band kicks in, you don't really hear that low end anymore. You're just hearing the bright toppy stuff. So that's been a constant sort of elusive thing that you're chasing, trying to maintain the fatness of the acoustic guitar whilst being in the midst of a band. And our sound engineer's been great for helping out with that over the years. Jason Brown, he's a top fellow and top engineer.
Yeah, definitely sounded great the other night. And has he been a long-term part of the Waifs? Has he been with you guys for, the duration, so to speak, or is he? What's the relationship
we've had a few sound engineers over the year, but Jason's definitely been with us the longest. It'd be getting on for 15 to 20 years now.
Wow, great.
And, he's it's like everybody in our band and in our crew. Like it's all pretty much entrenched family kind of situation. So when you find good people, you want to stick with them, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your background, mate. So are you from Moruya in New South Wales? Is that what I dug up on Wiki? Was that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's a little town on the south coast of New South Wales. And
it's a beautiful spot.
I was born. Yeah, it is lovely. I was born there, and then I think I was 3 years old, and family moved to Melbourne, and then 3 years later we went to New Zealand, and then came back to Australia when I was 9 years of age, and I finished off my schooling in Moruya.
Mm-hmm.
But it was actually while we were in New Zealand that I first started playing music, and what happened was that my family all started to get guitar lessons, and I was too small for a guitar. At least the guitar that they had, there was kind of a family guitar, the communal guitar. They all got their lessons on, and I was a little kid. So to keep me pacified and feeling like I was part of things, they bought me a ukulele, and I went to the same teacher and got ukulele lessons. And I really enjoyed it actually. And at the end of our 3 years in New Zealand, when we went home, I came back to Australia. The music teacher who was giving us all lessons, he said to my dad, I don't really mind if all you guys just, don't go any further with the guitar, but make sure you keep that young fella going on the ukulele. He might have a bit of potential.
Yeah.
So
nice.
We got back to Australia, and there was no ukulele teacher, and I just had the book. I was learning to read music at that stage, but even in those early days, I wasn't really that fond of that side of things. I was just playing by ear, more or less. I'd memorise the pieces I had to play, and he'd always pull me up and go, hang on, play this bar here, and I wouldn't know where I was. And so he'd catch me up. But at any rate, I had a few pieces that I had learned and knew. I had my book of tunes that I'd learned over those years in New Zealand. And because there was no ukulele players or no teacher, I just kind of let it drift away. And it wasn't until I was 13 years of age when I was at a mate's birthday party sleepover, and he got a few videos out. One of them was Back to the Future.
Oh, right.
And Michael J. Fox, does the trying to be good at the high school prom.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that, and something just lit a fire in me. I thought, that's what I want to do. I remembered Mum and Dad had an old guitar sitting around somewhere, so when I got home the next day, I went and found it and basically started teaching myself. I learned how to play. We actually used to recorded it on a record player on a cassette player off the telly, and so we could rewind it and play it back and learn by ear how to play, or at least imitate how to play Johnny B. Good. And I was away. That was the beginning of my journey on the guitar.
Fantastic! What a great start. That's that 50s rock and roll kind of got me excited too. That sort of, I didn't know what it was. I just heard that sort of material and I was like, wow, this is electric. This has got a vibe. And then and you see Back to the Future and he's like duck walking and it's like, this is cool. Yeah.
Well, there was that movie, and the other one that was very pivotal at that time was Crossroads.
Yeah.
With Ralph Macchio in it, and it's, the story of he busts Willie Brown, the harmonica player, out of it was like a senior citizens kind of infirmary.
Yeah.
He busts him out and gets him down to Mississippi to the Crossroads, and there's just some great music in it. And we used to same thing. We used to record on the cassette player and play it back and try to work out all the licks. And
Yep.
So blues and that 50s rock and roll, that was the stuff that I really got hooked on at the beginning.
Fantastic. Yeah, you can't go wrong with Ry Cooder in that mix.
Yeah, for sure.
Scared of the silence, scared of the sound, fumbling at the deadbolt door. It's better to run than stick around for tomorrow just to get what for. Buckshot peppered in a shea oak tree where the rope swing hangs like a noose. 44 miles to liberty. If he don't cut that bloodhound loose, fly by night, the darkness of the day is much too bright for you to slip away. Tracks cut deep in the virgin.
I mean, you've sort of primarily, on the records, you've primarily been an acoustic player. Obviously, like you said, there was been splashes of electrics here and there for colour, but primarily an acoustic player. That's a pretty good dedication over the period of the band, because you guys formed in, let me have a look, was it 1992?
92, yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic to still be making music and to interact and touring, and it's such a great thing to have done personally and musically. So cool. So tell me about, have you wanted to jump on the electrics and sort of branch out, or have you kind of just been acoustic is 100% the sound of the band, the sound of what I do?
Well, I guess the sound has evolved over the years. I mean, when I met Donna and Vicky from the Waifs, I was only playing electric guitar.
Right.
After being hooked on that, those influences that I just mentioned from those couple of movies from that era, I got straight into playing in local cover bands. Not being old enough to get into the places I was playing in legally, but doing gigs, 2 or 3 gigs each weekend, usually with guys and girls older than myself.
Mm-hmm.
I actually left home with one of those bands after I finished high school, and we went up to Darwin and we were playing around the circuit up there, just in the pubs and whatnot. But along the way, I'd come across a fellow who he had an acoustic guitar. He was left-handed, and he'd play his right-handed guitar upside down, but he was playing all these Cat Stevens, Bob Dylan, Neil Young, all these kind of classic singer-songwriter tunes. And I remember just being really spellbound by it. I kind of switched at that moment. I kind of went from wanting to be a guitar hero kind of guy to loving melodies and lyrics and acoustic music. So I was traveling with this rock band, but I'd pick myself up an acoustic guitar, and every spare moment I was learning all those kind of songs. So we ended up going on a tour. We left Darwin and went down to Broome and ended up at the Roebuck Bay Hotel and walked into the bar there, and Donna and Vicky were in there playing all of the songs that I'd just been absorbing for the period of time leading up to that. And here's 2 girls with acoustic guitars, a harmonica, and just this magical thing happening. And I'm sitting there watching and going, I know every song that they're playing. I'm supposed to be part of that sound. And so it ended up I was a disheveled, rock and roll guitar player, and Donna took pity on me, and the band, we were playing at the same venue, and they were staying in the nice fancy resort rooms, and we were out in these dongers out the back, and the shower didn't work. And anyway, we got chatting to the girls, and Donna said, if you need a shower before your gig, you're welcome to come and use ours. So after I'd had a shower, I noticed a guitar sitting against the wall there in their room, and I said, do you mind if I have a play? And so I started playing. I think it was Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here, and I started to play the little lead lines at the start of the song, and Donna was jamming along, and she kind of stopped halfway through the song and said, do you want to join up with us and, come traveling and play music and have adventures? And I didn't hesitate to say yes, because well, the band I was in was only going to be around, it was a 1-year project. Everyone was going back at the end of the year, and we're almost kind of at that point anyhow.
Sure.
So I figured I'd rather do that than go to university, which was what I'd planned to do on my return. And they were playing the music that I loved as well. So I just kind of jumped into that and away we went. But, yeah, it was definitely very acoustic at that initial stage. And I think that's definitely the identifiable that's the sound of the band. So because I had played electric before, I just picked up the acoustic and started to play it like I'd played electric guitar. It was just a guitar to me. So, I've often had people say that I play the acoustic like it's an electric in some sense, playing lead and bending and, doing a lot of that sort of stuff. I think a lot of people do it now, but maybe back then it wasn't as commonly seen, at least in the circles we were moving in. But definitely I always feel like the acoustic sound is the core of the Waifs sound, but it's been nice to dabble in the electric along the way here and there as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely your approach to the acoustic guitar is, after listening to a bit of it with analytical ears the last few days, definitely you can hear that approach, that electric approach, a bit more heavy-handed, but it definitely has evolved. I sort of went through the catalogue as well, and this nice sort of like pluck, this sort of like snappy kind of intermix between. Are you sort of hybrid picking, like a lot of pick and fingers and that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. I always have used a flat pick, and usually kind of hold that, and then the 3 extra fingers on that left hand, on the right hand, just grabbing a string with those here and there. I've never been a guitar player that sort of studied formally or learnt technique really. It was all just kind of pretty organic the way it evolved.
Yep.
So yeah, but definitely I like the sound of the fingers. In fact, if I'm just sitting at home playing, I rarely will use a pick. I just love the sound of that fleshy sound. But recently I actually discovered in Felicity's studio here these picks that are like 2.5 mil thick or something. Like they're really monstrous thick things. And I looked at them and thought, that's ridiculous, because I'd only ever use, I thought I was using a pretty stiff pick. It was a 1 mil or, slightly thicker than 1 mil. And I liked that stiffness. But when I picked up these picks, it was like, wow, that's got an amazing, it just makes your guitar sound so much fatter. And it had a really great tone to it.
Projection.
So I've actually just, totally transitioned, and that's all I use now.
Wow.
In fact, I've got to get another packet of them, because there was 2 of them here, and I think if I lose one, I'm down to 1, and then if I lose that, I'm going to be back to those other things. And I pick up the old pick I used to use, and it just sounds thin and weedy now. So
yeah, you better get on the shopping list and get some thick picks.
Yeah, but in addition to the flat picking, there's a few songs that I've used the thumb pick on as well.
Yep.
And that was really inspired from our drummer, Dave McDonald, who he has a friend back in Western Australia who's a really fine finger picker, fingerstyle guitar player, and Dave got inspired by him and bought himself an old guitar, went on a bit of a backpacking trip overseas, and came back 6 months later doing the boom chick thing. And I remember hearing that and going, wow, what are you doing there? And he showed me a few basic things, and then I was away. And it's the same thing, being away wasn't like absorbing myself into all the formal technique of doing that sort of thing. I just mimic it. I go, okay, well, that's kind of sounds like it. That's my way of doing it, and that's good enough for me. I guess you'd probably say I'm lazy and undisciplined. And I often wish that I could actually spend the time and knuckle down and learn a few things about music and understand more, even if it's just understanding more what I already do myself. But I'd love to kind of expand my mind and my horizons on the fingerboard well beyond where it is. But it often feels like life's too busy to actually devote the time. And when you sit down with a guitar in your hand, you you just want to play. So I just go back to doing what I do already.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I reckon you've bluffed us all so far, so it's working. It's good.
It's very kind of you, Pete. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I've also noticed a lot of sort of pull off stuff and like utilizing capos or just like pull offs and little triplet frills or thrills, whatever, no, not frills, thrills, well, whatever they are called.
That sounds like a Greenspoon record.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fast or triplety kind of rolls are almost bluegrass inspired. Have you sort of done a lot of listening on Americana kind of like bluegrass material, like a lot of more American music as opposed to like what you've heard here in Australia? Like what's the background in terms of picking up techniques back in the day when you were kind of taking on, skills and approaches to your instrument, or have you sort of always been just play what you hear in your head kind of approach?
Yeah, it's pretty much playing what I hear in my head, but often, like what you're hearing in your head is stuff that's coming in through your ears too. So
yeah,
we the Waifs toured in America an awful lot, back in 20 plus years ago. We were over there for 9-10 months at a time, and playing a lot of festivals and just hearing a lot of that stuff. I'd always loved that traditional American music, the bluegrass and the country and that roots blues kind of stuff. But being there was quite extraordinary, really, because you're there in the midst of that living culture of music. Like it feels like from Australia, we obviously first people heard that music on recordings from over in America, and we have our own scene here, which is great. But when you're there and you're at a festival and there's these little kids that are all wandering around with their instruments, just having bluegrass jams and stuff, it's like they're growing up being immersed in that, and the culture of it is so rich, and I found that really inspiring. And then of course being on festival bills, you're there with some of the preeminent names of those genres, and you're watching it being done like that's the real deal. And so yeah, I'd often just go back to my room afterwards and go, oh yeah, I remember I've still got those notes and those sounds resonating in my head, so I'd try and work out some way to approximate that on my own guitar.
Yeah.
And but yeah, definitely that kind of sound has been a big, it's been a love of mine right through, even prior to playing in the Waifs. I remember kind of hearing country music. Someone gave me a compilation of country classics, when I was in my mid-teens, and I didn't even know who the artists were I was listening to. But just remember hearing that sound and feeling like that's striking a chord.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're going, but I want to go there with you.
Pushing comes to shoving,
gotta feel the love returning, can't deny it. It's been so long, it's overdue.
I remember getting given a cassette tape of Doc Watson when I was a kid, and I didn't have any song titles. I didn't know what the album was. I had no idea. I just had like about 6 songs. It was like he just did like a mixtape for me. This other mentor guitar player that was playing in a sort of few of the local bands. He's like, oh, check this stuff out, mate. You might enjoy it, you might not. Yeah, Doc Watson was like, wow, what is this music? It was so fresh, and I heard nothing like it, I just didn't know what it was. It was so inspiring. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's phenomenal. And I remember I think I bought, those homespun books and cassettes they were back in the day. I think I bought a Doc Watson one. Yeah, it's like I've got a collection of books and instructional material that I've bought over the years with every intention to sit down and learn how to do it right. As I say, just never been disciplined enough to really push through with it. But Doc Watson, certainly, I've got one of his books. And years ago when the Waifs were touring in the States, we ended up playing at Merlefest in North Carolina, which is, the festival that's kind of created around his son Merle Watson, and who's also a fantastic picker as well. And Doc was actually there, he was still alive at the time, and he came. I remember, like, we went on to do our set. We were kind of in the mid to late afternoon, and Doc was around, and he'd kind of check out different acts and whatever. And I remember somebody bringing him to the side of the stage. Like, we'd just gone on and played our first song, and then I looked across, and there's Doc Watson being sort of ushered in and taking his seat beside the stage, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness,
No pressure.
and and just as it would happen, the next song on the set list was one of the better known Waifs songs called Lighthouse.
Yeah.
And it's got that's one I throw a thumb pick on and do that kind of alternate picking fingerstyle stuff.
Yeah.
And I think at some point during that song, I remember I kind of caught this movement out of the corner of my eye, and I saw, and Doc Watson was getting up and leaving.
Oh no.
So I don't know. He may have just had another appointment and just wanted to catch a few seconds of this Australian band, or maybe he needed to go to the bathroom or something, or maybe he just thought, "What's that doing here? I've got to get out of here." At any rate, it was a huge thrill to be there and at that festival and to have him actually there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, just to have him there side stage for a few numbers, or for a half a number perhaps. And also, like I said, I was listening back to some of your material, your released records. There's a real transition, I reckon, between your second record, Shelter Me, and Sink or Swim. What happened in that period? Did you guys find a producer? Like, it's like the audio is different, the band sounds different. I don't know, just there's like a real notch, like it just like stepped right up. Was there, what happened in that period? Can you remember between those two records?
It's going back quite a long time. Now, I think on the previous album, Shelter Me, there was a couple of songs that had a bit of electric guitar on them. And I think the girls probably felt a bit excited about that. Oh, electric guitar, maybe we'll be sort of like a real band or something. But I think there was... it's probably just like a maturing of us as people. Our first album is very green. Like, it's still one of the most loved Waifs albums, but I listen to it and it's like, I still feel proud of it, but you can just hear how young and fresh and naive we are. And, and everything's kind of exciting and a bit overawed. We're a bit overawed by, we're in a studio and we're putting down songs. So it certainly captures that, it's a snapshot of where the band was at that time. And I think the next time around, we had we had two different producers on that record.
Right.
And then the Sink or Swim album, Adam Rhodes from Melbourne was one of them. And Chris Dickey, who was an English guy who'd moved to Australia, and he'd done a few big records overseas. So we used the two of them for some reason. I'm not sure why. There were two separate kind of recording in Adelaide the first time around with Chris, and then Adam in Melbourne for the other half of it, and we kind of somehow put it all together and made it into the one album. But we decided to go with Adam for the Sink or Swim album, and he was a great musical mind and great producer. But I've found that in a lot of the producers that we've worked with, we haven't had someone who's really come in and said, I'm going to grab this by the reins and this is the sound we're going to go for. They've really just let us discover and find our own thing and guided it along its own natural course. But, I think there was probably an intentional decision to have a bit more electric guitar, to go for maybe a bit more of a poppier sound, or a more of a just flesh it out a bit more, so we might have more of a chance of getting a song on the radio or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Perhaps. I mean, I say that it's such a long time ago. I'm trying to remember, how I could answer your question really precisely, and it's a little hard to recall all the details. I mean, I kind of say that comment, but then I also reflect back and think, well, we were never really that fussed about, being on it was never like an ultimate goal for us. Like, we just recorded the music that we wanted, and whatever happened. But I know I haven't listened to any of those records for quite some time, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it just
when
definitely seems
you
like a
hear
real transition between those two records. And like you said, it's probably just you guys maturing as artists, as songwriters, finding what really works, honing your skills on the road, because you guys were road dogs, right? You'd sort of travel all the time,
yeah.
close proximity with each other. That's just the natural evolution of making music, right? You just sort of, it just gets better and better. So that's probably just
Yeah.
what was captured, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for all my long-winded rambling there. That you've actually probably just summed it up in a sentence perfectly.
Fantastic. So let's maybe talk about the new record, since we're talking about records and things. Birdsong. So this was basically you guys did some demos around the kitchen table and sent them to Matt Fell, and him and Josh put their magic on it. Is that kind of the bulk of what happened? And you guys did some overdubs from home and...
Yeah, pretty much. We asked Matt if he was interested in working with us, and he was. So, but in order to kind of get his interest up, we thought we better make our demos, like do a bit of work on the arrangements and send him something that sounds kind of like it's ready to go.
Yeah.
And so we actually spent quite a bit of time hammering the arrangements and working on, different parts and whatnot. And then we just did iPhone recordings, as you say, around the kitchen table.
Yeah.
And sent them to him. And yeah, he was really happy with it. He said, "Well, we don't really need to do anything with the arrangements. How about I'll just put your demo to the grid, and then we'll send it to Josh. He can put some drums on it. I'll put some bass and send it back, and then you can just re-record all your bits to that." So that's pretty much how it went. And it would have been lovely to be able to sit together in the same room and do it all together, but there was something nice about doing it the way we did, because you get back these great rhythm section tracks, and it's like, wow, okay. And Josh particularly was doing some really inventive stuff. I think Matt actually gave him the instruction that he wasn't allowed to use any hi-hats on the record. So he's kind of he's a very inventive and wonderful musician. So he kind of, some of the things that he'd send back really kind of inspired us to go in, different directions with what we were doing, and it inspired new parts that weren't necessarily part of the original conception of the song.
Fantastic. That's great when that happens, when each person involved can sort of trigger little bits of excitement or things that you didn't realize might have been a great thing for the song or for that sound. So that's a great collaboration, hey, when it inspires you all like that.
Oh yeah, it's really great, and we're actually getting to play with. Well, we're going to be playing with Matt when we're down in Tasmania.
Cool.
Coming up, and we're also going to get to play with Josh. We're not going to get to play with them both together, but maybe one day we'll be able to make that happen. But it's really really looking forward to actually getting that opportunity to do it live.
Yeah, nothing quite like doing that. Hey, like after so much blood, sweat, and tears have gone into a record, you've sort of analysed it, you've overanalyzed it, you've like torn it to pieces, and you've heard it a million times. To actually put all the elements in place in a good room, in a good space, and then just like perform it. It's such a great relief, and to see the instant reaction, from the folks in the audience.
Yeah. Well, we actually were recently at the Gympie Muster, and that was the first time we'd really presented anything off the record live. And because there's quite a lot of electric guitar on the album, and I'm predominantly playing acoustic, so we can't necessarily do everything at once. So we actually got another guitar player in to play some of those parts. And Duncan Toombs, I don't know if you've ever had him on your podcast or not, but he'd be certainly worth getting on. He's a phenomenal guitar picker.
He's a great picker,
and
for sure.
Lovely fella. Yeah. But he came in and learnt all the parts off the album, and then for the rest of the set, it was just like, just do whatever you want to do, kind of thing, and that was a lot of fun. So, that's always one of the challenges of recording, when you layer up a whole bunch of parts, and if you're doing it in a more stripped back context, trying to figure out which parts, trying to get all the identifiable bits in, and often you're actually working on a whole new approach to the song where you're incorporating as much of that stuff as you can, while still kind of making a bed for the vocals to go over as well. So it's a great challenge. I really enjoyed that, particularly on the first album that Felicity and I did together, which was much more acoustic and it sounds a lot simpler. But I remember learning a few of those tunes and thinking, I don't know that I can really play this and sing it at the same time, and just really sort of going through that process until it finally clicks, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's there. I don't have to think about it anymore.
That's the ideal, isn't it? Is to get to that point where you don't have to engage your brain. If you can just sort of connect musically somehow, right. And that's the key. Yeah, no, it is. It's I feel like I always have to engage my brain. Sometimes I don't do it quite enough. But if you can get on autopilot, I often watch musicians that just seem completely liberated on the instrument. It's almost like they're hearing something in their head and there's no barrier between their brain and their fingers. It's just coming out as it's occurring to them. And that's something that I often watch with great admiration and envy, because I haven't felt like I've approached that rare stratosphere to this point. I've often felt like I've kind of been in this little box that, I go back to those early days of learning the blues licks and the Chuck Berry song and all that sort of stuff. And I feel like, I might, I obviously know more now because I've been doing it for longer. But sometimes I feel like back then when I knew less, it was better because I was more fearless. I just kind of take a stab at something and see what happened. And I felt like sometimes the limited amount that I do know can feel like it constrains me a little bit, where I tend to go to the same places that I'm familiar with, and I don't have that sense of adventure and that came with not really knowing anything at all back then. That's a great point you make. I often struggle with that same headspace as well. It's like the more you know, the harder it is to unlearn a lot of that stuff and technique that you've learned and just apply your gut or your heart and soul to something, like react in real time without having this like memory of, or theory stuff sort of interact and sort of say, no, that's not right. You shouldn't be playing that, like sort of trusting your reaction, your gut. Yeah, that's a real valid point you make there, I think. As younger players, back in the day, it's, I hear recordings of myself sometimes as well from back when I was first starting. It's like, wow, that was, like I didn't know about that there, but I just did it because I don't know, I must have just had some sort of intuition to just follow your heart,
Why ain't nothing but a guessing game? When you're in love, there's only one face everywhere you look, and everyone that sees your face reads you like an open book. How can love undo a lonesome history? Guess the guessing game became a deeper mystery. I didn't know until
So what was yours? Did you just kind of have a similar entry into it like I did? You got inspired and picked up a guitar and taught yourself, or did you go through a more formal
100%
process?
I took piano lessons for about 3 years with a local teacher, and reading a lot, doing all the competition. I wouldn't say competitions. You go and do the exams. You go and do your grade 1, your grade 2, your grade 3. You got to sit up straight and you got to wear a nice shirt and you got to I just wasn't into that. I kind of got a bit too rigid. I just wanted to rock out a bit with a guitar, I think, and sort of interact at school with people as well. Like, the piano, the way that I was approaching piano, I think was a little bit restricted in terms of interaction and playing with other people. It just felt like a lonely, rigid sort of approach to making music. And I'd try and play some like Jerry Lee sort of stuff and some sort of Little Richard inspired stuff. I thought that was fantastic. And my music teacher was like, yeah, that's nice, but, you should be playing the notes on the paper sort of thing. It's like, fuck this. This is not for me. So, yeah, you said.
And how did you go with – oh, sorry, I was just going to say, how did you go – you mentioned your teachers at school. Were they encouraging for you, pursue music as a viable option for your life, or were you sort of steered away from that as though – because I know in my experience, the teachers said, music's nice, but do it as a hobby. You'll never make a living out of it. And you need to go get a qualification. So something you can fall back on when your musical dreams inevitably fail.
Wow.
And, I remember that it wasn't an encouraging environment, even though, the teachers, well, the music teacher recognised I had some level of ability with it. There was not really that same environment that I think exists now in schools where there's a lot of scope for creative, artistic endeavours and, not just in the performance side, but behind the scenes, the technical side as well. And we went to see our daughter play in a school spectacular type of thing. It's called Starstruck here on the Central Coast of New South Wales. And it was in, the Newcastle Entertainment Centre, and it was a massive production, and everything was run by the kids. They were doing sound, they were doing lights, they'd done all the props and the staging, and everything was, just the kids were doing it all. And the school's providing the platform and the opportunity for them to learn and get passionate and then, open up avenues for them to eventually go into those paths once they finish school. But, I remember for me, it was all just the academic subjects and creativity. That's nice to do on the side, but don't ever think you can make a living out of it. Did you have the same kind of experience when you were coming through school?
No. Well, very, very, very small resources. Like I grew up in a small country town, maybe like about 600-700 sort of people, and I actually still live in the area, still live close by. My kids still go to the same school as I do. I did, not do. But no, my teachers were very, it was never like career-based teaching. It was more like just encouraging. And there was lots of after-hours opportunities as well. Like, my band's playing at the local pub on a Sunday afternoon, come down, hang out, maybe sit in or whatever, that kind of thing. But it was never like treated as a hobby. It was more just like there's lots of opportunities. But the area that I live in isn't really musical, diverse or rich culture here. It's very much, mining, fishing, farming. Music here isn't really a focus whatsoever. Yeah. So it was more just a bit of a fun thing to do with support, with great mentors and people around me to support. But it was never like, this is going to be like what I do forever. It's sort of how I felt, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
But then I formed a little trio. I formed a band at school. We kind of played a lot of songs from, we played, let me think, a lot of Deep Purple, Cream, Lynyrd Skynyrd. So sort of stuff that definitely wasn't hits at the time, and people were kind of like confused as to what my influences were. They're like, what is this music that you're playing, Pete? And I was like, oh, this is great. Play some Santana. And they're like, just like confused. But it kind of made sense eventually. Playing in pubs when I was a bit older. I had my dad playing drums, which was a great little bonus. He'd book the gig and drive the car and load the van up, and so he'd sort of be the parent guardian. He'd sneak me in, play the set and sit backstage or back in the car in the breaks, that sort of thing. So yeah, great opportunities, but yeah, it was never like, this is the ladder to success sort of thing. It was just like, let's have some fun and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Lots of support. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I had the same thing from my my mum used to drive me to, band practice a couple of times a week, which was about kind of a half an hour trip.
Yeah.
And she'd sit in the car and wait while we're in there doing our thing. And, so there was definitely a lot of support around it. But, as far as, and I knew that I wanted to, I remember a music teacher said to me and my mate we'd both kind of started playing at the same time and were at similar levels. And he asked the question of each of us, what do you want to do with music? Do you want to, do you want to make your life around it, or do you just want to do it on the weekends as a hobby? And I remember my friend saying he was happy to do that, but I knew I'd been bitten by this bug. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely a lot of support around that, and same as like you say, being a young fella going to the pubs and being underage, but being up there on stage and being encouraged and supported in that. But I just often look at the school situation now and feel really happy that kids are given so much opportunity and encouragement with it that
I agree.
I didn't feel like around in my personal situation at least.
Yeah. To hear like the concert you just mentioned, like the whole production and everything being put on by kids, that's where the learning is. Like you can obviously learn stuff in the classroom, but until you're actually got the pressure of a show, that's like high intensity learning right there.
Yeah, that's where you learn the most, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like any gig, it's worth about 5 rehearsals,
Well, I can see the distant high beams of a road train on the track, but it's so far away that I don't hear a sound. Just the crackling of the twigs upon the coals of my campfire, my little dog and me and no one else around. Just shy of Weena Creek, we stopped and set up for the night. Made a fire of coals beside a boab tree. The rusty ridge behind was glowing in the final rays of light as I baked some spuds and brewed a pot of tea. On the track, on the track, on the trail, reaching like a hobo when he hears that whistle wail. On the trail, on the trail, on the track, driven like a bullock with a stalk upon his back. Been waylaid, unpaid, mislaid, forbade, betrayed, dismayed, delayed, derailed, blackmailed, curtailed, female, stuck in a box from quagmire, quicksand, pinned down, barbed wire, fractile, bushfire, diesel. Once or twice I might have even failed. Now I'm on the track, I'm on the trail. Later on, my songs were hitching to the smoke as it was drifting, rising high into the heavens up above. The gift of gratitude and wonder for the spell that I was under made me serenade this country that I love. On the track, on the track, on the trail.
So tell me, mate, I've got an inkling you've been making guitars. Tell me about that passion. You've been playing them on stage.
Yeah, I have. I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, so I was actually encouraged to make stuff right from a really young age. And, because I didn't have money to take me around to my mates' places and, buy all the latest gadgets and toys, it was all pretty humble. So, from the time I was a little kid, I was on sewing machines and hammer and nails and bits of wood and always creating something. And it's kind of a passion that I had right through my life. And I guess at one point, the fact that I fell in love with the guitar and I already had this passion for making things, it was just a matter of time before that sort of all merged together. And I got the idea in my head one day how, people make guitars, like they exist. Somebody puts them together and builds it. I wonder if I could have a go at that. And I'd met a young fella who was kind of going through a similar experience to me in that respect. And we used to chat about it and, read stuff and learn about different tone woods and, just fill our heads. This is before the internet, mind you. And, just absorb whatever we could. And you go to festivals and there'd be luthier displays there and you go talk to people. And it was just this kind of burgeoning desire that I had for some time. And then my friend, who he'd actually kind of left his job and got a small business grant from the government to go into building guitars. And so he had a serious crack at it. And I remember going there to his place one day and I thought, well, I'm going to have a go. And I built a ukulele. He kind of walked me through the steps of building a ukulele. And by that, once I'd got my hooks into that, I was away. And just fell in love with building guitars. So I've predominantly built acoustic guitars, usually copies of Gibson LOOs or J45s is probably my favourite instrument, and so that's what I'm currently playing on stage. I've been playing them for quite a few years now, the guitars that I've
That's
made.
so good.
I've made electric solid body guitars. I've made a couple of arch tops as well.
Really?
But the J45, the J45 that I play, the Waifs were lucky to tour with Bob Dylan over the years.
Yep.
And I had always wanted a J45, and that's what Bob was playing on stage at the time. And in fact, he wasn't playing much guitar at all. He was playing keyboard a lot at that time, but he always had these J45s there, and I'd gotten quite friendly with his guitar tech, and we often talked about guitars and building guitars and whatnot. And I said, do you reckon I could, trace and take some photos of Bob's, one of his spare J45s, because I want to build one. And he actually just went and brought me Bob's actual stage guitar. Yep. And so I made a tracing of it, took some measurements of it, and had a look inside with the mirror. And so my J45 was based off Bob Dylan's J45. So it's
that's so cool. So cool.
Yeah.
And
but it's such a.
Sorry, I was just going to say, like, so that's a very full-on thing to just sort of try like that. Like, you need a lot of tools, a lot of specialized techniques of woodwork like that. That's a pretty big thing to just go, hey, I made a few guitars. Like, that's massive, man.
Yeah, well, what I used to do every year, I kind of would save up I'd always keep a bit of money aside and put away to, in case I found a nice guitar. I'd usually treat myself to one, really nice musical purchase each year. And this one particular year, when I decided I'm going to really have a go at this, I just put all that money into buying a bandsaw and a drill press and, a thickness sander and, and the planes and nice chisels. And, I knew all the gear that I needed to have to do it. And so I just went out and splurged on that stuff and thought, well, if ever I feel like I get the idea to get a certain kind of guitar, maybe I can just have a go at making it. So hence making the J45. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, talking about the kids, jumping at the deep end and learning on the job. Every gig is worth 5 rehearsals. Like, there was nothing like actually jumping in and building a guitar. I mean, some of the more precise kind of aspects of it, like slotting a fingerboard initially, like, you can buy a fingerboard at whatever scale length you want. That's already slotted. Yep. So I did that, for the first few, and then once you kind of have a go at it, you sort of pick up on it, and I haven't got to do it for a little while, but I know that if I had time, I'd really absorb myself into it again, and I know the areas that I'd improve, and the current guitars I'm playing, I know how I'd make them better, and I'm really keen to do that. And it's never something that I've really thought I'd do for money, or I'm not interested in selling them. I've given a few things away over the years, but when I'm immersed in building a guitar, I kind of feel like I enjoy that at least as much. And there's moments where I feel like I enjoy it even more than playing a guitar.
It's so therapeutic, I imagine, just like totally devoting your brain and energy to putting a guitar together. In preconceived, of just thinking about the design, the bracing, the timbers you're going to use, the color you might paint it, all that sort of stuff. Like, it must be just such a great, and then, obviously to perform with it and to stick it into a case and fly and play somewhere with a thing that didn't exist, until you created it. That's such a great concept.
Yeah, there's something very magical about it. It's, to write a song on a guitar that you built yourself and take it out on the road and play it live. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, as far as the guitars that I build are very traditional instruments. I'm not kind of revolutionizing or having some new approach to bracing design or whatever. I just feel like those classic guitars are just so perfect and beautiful, and I just want to make those. And so it is a very therapeutic, meditative kind of practice. There's nothing nicer. I used to really love just getting into my workshop, having a cuppa in the morning, getting in there nice and early, and the whole day's ahead, and you kind of know, well, I'm going to get the lining, glued onto the sides today, and the neck and tail block in, and you kind of have your game plan of where you're going to get to, and you're playing some music in the background and just get lost in that little world of building a guitar, and it's just such a beautiful practice.
I'd love to do that. I don't think I'd ever commit to buying the tools. I think I'd probably just go and visit a few mates who have all the setup and just go, can I just like take over your space for a few weeks, or just like maybe get them to guide me through, like, all right, can I have your expertise for a few weeks and we'll build a guitar? And that's like a lifetime bucket list for me, totally, to build. So I've always fooled around with electrics and, routed things out and stuck different pickups in and different bridges and in different necks, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's just like bolt on, but, it's sort of pretty user-friendly sort of stuff. But to actually, steam some wood around a shape and, glue, binding on and stuff like that, that'd be so much fun.
Oh, it is. But even just doing what you're talking about, messing around with the electric guitars, like that's enough to get you hooked on the idea of it. It's a lot of fun. So
many different ways, though, isn't there? Like, and that's probably why you've made a few. Is like, next time I'll try this. Next time I'll try that. I don't think there's ever like one way suits everyone. It's like, I've learnt this.
Yeah, and there's always that mystery to it as well. And yourself, even with production line guitars, there might be 1,000 of them have come off the same production process, and all the timber's dimensioned off a machine, and it's all exactly the same. And it might even be the next slice off the same tree, or the same billet of wood. And then for some reason, the way that one came out, it just really sings, and the one next to it isn't quite as nice. But it's that's part of the beauty of building a guitar too. Like, you kind of what you're aiming for, and you're trying to achieve, and you put it together and do everything that you can. But when you string it up for the first time, there's still that moment of, wow, there's its voice, there's its sound, and obviously it develops the older it gets, the more it's played. But hearing it make a noise for the first time is a real thrill.
Absolutely. Have you had any like expectations, explode after like spending all that time on it and it didn't quite sound as good as you'd expect, or has it kind of always been, or you haven't had any too high expectations after it's been created?
Yeah, I think there was like some of the early guitars are a bit overbuilt.
Right.
My favourite tone wood is mahogany for an acoustic guitar for back and sides, and Honduras mahogany is just a lovely timber. I don't know. I couldn't get any at one point, and I got hold of some sapelli, which is African mahogany, and it's a bit heavier, and got a slightly different character to it. And I just remember, finishing guitar and thinking, it actually felt heavy and it sounded heavy. So there's been a few where you feel like, it didn't turn out exactly as I want. Or it's like, talking about the early Waifs albums, you go back and look at those early guitars and go, yep, I was green, I was still learning, it was all new. It's a great accomplishment to have done it, but I know so much more now, and I'm much better at it.
Yeah.
So I hope I get some time down the track to actually sink myself into building guitars again, because I really miss it and love it. And I've got a couple on the go that I've just been sitting there waiting to be finished for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
So watch this space.
Oh, that's such a great thing to do, man. So cool. There's a great luthier down here. I've got a 00. He built me, Billy Tarrant, his name is. He sponsors the show. And Matt's getting a bouzouki made by him as well. One of those sort of Irish, like a man, like basically a Mando, but man size. You can handle it. I can't play Mando. They're too small.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a great luthier.
No, that's a great instrument. Yeah. Billy Tarrant, did you say?
He's in Devonport. So if you guys are around that neck of the woods, I'm sure he'd be up for a call in.
Yeah, I'd love to. And does he use a lot of black wood?
He's a traditionalist, really. Well, he uses whatever. Like if a customer wants something, he'll go, yep, no worries. That's what the customer wants. But he's, like the one he made me was, mahogany and spruce combo with like that maple binding. Such a nice traditional blend of timbers. So, but he's open to anything. But yeah, Blackwood's the Tassie kind of timber, eh? I think he
there's a lot of people doing it.
Studied under, is it Gerard Gillet? Is that ring a bell?
Oh yeah,
yeah. I think he studied under him.
Yeah. I actually had one of his guitars at one point years ago.
Yeah, right.
Gillet, and in fact, I've bought a lot of stuff from Gillet.
Right.
Like they're in Sydney. There, I used to kind of stop in and pick up some supplies, buy timber and binding and lining and just whatever you might need.
Yeah, right.
They're a good source for all that sort of stuff.
Oh, that's great, man. Well, I'm going to finish up for today. So thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy promo schedule for the new record. And yeah, like I said, hopefully the gig's good in Queensland. Your pedalboard works a treat. And
I think it's going to come together all right. It's all the main issue with it right now is getting it and all the other bits and pieces in a Pelican case that's not going to exceed the weight limit.
That's the trick.
So
getting in under the weight limit. Merch, all that stuff. Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fun times.
Yep. Anyway, lovely chatting, Pete. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for listening, folks, to another episode of Say It With Guitars. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast, share it around to your mates, leave a good review, and hopefully we'll see you next time.